Hello, this is Lucas from Hamby Media. This is actually our second episode of Bang for Your Business, our new podcast that we're doing, which is obviously during this lockdown phase, it's all about kind of offering business owners, consumers, advice, help from others, influencers in the industry. Today, we've got a very special guest. This is one of my favourite clients. We've worked with each other for coming up to 8-9 months now. Obviously, he's a business owner. Running a business during these times not easy, so I think he's going to be able to offer us all with, some good advice on how we can get through this, what he's putting in place for his business. So yeah, let's get right into it. Marcus Robinson, who's the director of Fontaine Motors, one of the, best Audi specialists in the UK for over 25 years. He's an incredible business owner and boss and partner. So it's been really, really wonderful for me to work with him, learn from him. Marcus, hello.
Hi, Lucas. How are you?
Good, thanks. How's everything going? Obviously, we're going to get into everything very shortly about how you're dealing with this situation. But firstly, how are things? How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. The garden has never looked so good. So I've been breaking my back in the garden. I've been helping a friend in his bike shop because he's found that he's doing now about 4 times the amount of business that he normally does in a bicycle shop. So I've been helping him. It's been a change. Yeah, it's been a change. But being out in the weather we've had recently has helped a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to get into obviously everything going on now and how you're kind of dealing with that. But firstly, I think it's important for us to give a bit of context as to the company that you've successfully built up over the years. Firstly, you tell us a little bit about Fontaine and its history.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So we're a car business. We retail cars and we service and repair them. We specialise in Audi. And in actual fact, it's 25 years, just over 25 years now since we started specialising in Audi. I came into the company 30 years ago, just 30 years ago, January just gone. I was in the retail motor trade. I was a general sales manager at a dealership. And one of my contacts was looking for some help in his business, and I went into business with him. And after a fairly short while, we came across the idea of specialising in Audi. Nobody else had done it at the time, and Audi were only a small percentage of the UK market at the time, and quite a niche product. But we really liked the Audi product. It was something we felt quite passionate about. So we went down that route, and here we are today. So we've got a fairly compact company, and we've got 2 branches. One's our central head office, if you like, in our retail department, and then we have a separate service workshop based in Buckinghamshire. We've got staff of just under 10 people, so quite small and compact. And we tend to specialise in the more of the sort of performance range of Audis. As Audi has become a giant really in the UK compared to what it was 25 years ago, it's meant that for us to really to compete in the market, we've had to sort of almost specialise within the product. So looking more towards the SRS models, performance cars we've done over the years, but more so now it's more important as the advent of the big car supermarkets and so on that are selling quite a lot of the mainstay models. For us to really be different in that market, we've had to sort of slightly change what we've been doing. So we've adapted over the years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, one thing that we've, even from the period of time we've been working together, I've seen how well you are at adapting kind of contextually to situations that are happening. And you're very pragmatic in that sense, I think, which is actually one of the most important things as a business owner. That, there may be something that that you guys should be doing. You may not necessarily you know, it may not necessarily be what you think is right at that point, but if that's what the market's saying, you will make the measures to kind of go in that direction. I think that's really kind of, you know, commendable there. So interestingly, you said about Audi, you know, how the Audi brand were perceived when Fontaine first started. It'd be interesting to just hear how that was in comparison to now. Obviously, as you say, they're a powerhouse, you know, without fail, one of the most popular OEMs in the country. So yeah, tell us how it was then when Fontaine first started.
It's interesting, yeah. I mean, if you were to sort of compare it, it would be like looking at a product like Alfa Romeo. In terms of, you judged Alfa Romeo quite niche, got quite a following with certain people, but really taking up a very small percentage of the market. And that's really what Audi felt like at the time. I'm not comparing Alfa with Audi, but only from that perspective.
Yeah.
And it was something where a lot of people didn't really understand the Audi brand. And funny enough, when we were, if you go right back to that beginning, what Audi, which was obviously part of Volkswagen, at that time they were being sold alongside Volkswagens in what they called a VAG, a Volkswagen Audi Group dealership, and you'd have the Volkswagens, and in another section of the showroom you'd have the Audis. And I think that it was, back then, it suffered from a bit of an identity crisis. But where Audi had really risen was from the rallying days. So if you take the Quattro, which was really the first really successful, or one of the very first very successful four-wheel drive sports cars that they used for rallying. And Audi had so many successes in rallying with that car that it created you know, a real niche following of people that really like the Audi product, very high quality, a bit different, very innovative compared to other makes. And there was a sort of quite an exciting modern edge to Audis, I think, against other brands, even from Germany. So I think that gave it its start. And then I think Audi realized they were onto a good thing. So around about, I think, 1994, or maybe slightly earlier, they decided to split the franchises. So they would no longer sell an Audi in a Volkswagen showroom. And they started to create Audi-only dealers. And it was the year 94, I believe, when they launched the new model A4. So they moved away from the numbers, so the Audi 80, Audi 100, and so on, right, and moved towards a letter and a number. And the first car that was launched was the Audi A4, which became a big success, and really sort of launched their new image and things to come.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously as a business owner, you know, there's a lot of decisions to be made, hundreds per day, some may argue. A lot of firefighting, as you're aware. For you, is there any standout decisions that you've made for the business that have been, you know, the best for you? Something that stands out significant for you that you think have really kind of changed the progression of the company?
Sure. So I would probably have to go back to saying Audi. I think definitely right back, if you go right back to the early 90s, mid 90s really, when we started specializing in Audi, I think it was the decision to always try to stand out from the crowd. You're either going to fall into a crowd follower and do what other people are doing, or you're going to say, well, what's the angle that I can be a little bit different? What can I offer the consumer that's different from somebody else? So I think it wasn't just a by chance thing that we did start specializing in Audi, but I do think that probably would have to be the absolute standout moment in the history of our business, was to make that decision to specialize in Audi. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy. I mean, the first 2 or 3 years, there were many times, you know, we asked ourselves, is this the right thing to do? Yeah. Because in some respects, by going only Audi, we were just closing our doors to everything else. And there were plenty of other profitable cars that we could have bought and sold. And we stayed at it. And I think it took about a good 3 years before we really gathered momentum. So I think I think there's two things I'd say. Is one is, yes, it's good to constantly have ideas and to stay on guard for things that are changing. But on the other hand, if you come up with a decision, you go down that route, you've got to give it enough time
Yeah.
to see the fruition.
Yeah. So for you, how important is it to diversify in business? Because I know this is something we've spoken about over the year, and something that I guess is one of the kind of hurdles we've come across is, whether whether you should be more niche into, say, performance area, or is it important to be, a bit broader and, look at the whole of the Audi range? So yeah, it'd be interesting to hear kind of your thoughts there, seeing as we've gone through this in the last year.
It's a really hard one to answer, and I think it comes down to how you feel yourself running a business. I think you've just got to stay in contact with obviously your team, with business, with trends. Keep an eye out, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook groups. I mean, I do think you need to mop up that information. You need to see what things are happening, but not to a degree that it becomes distractionary. I think it's important to stay fairly on your road that you've chosen, unless it's a complete disaster, and then you've got to change and adapt. But I think that it's important not to get too confused with what's going on out there. But I do think overall you need to, just keep reevaluating, going back to your decisions and saying, right, are we in the right area here, or do we need to change? And if we are changing, what are we changing to? And are we changing to something better? Are we jumping out the frying pan into the fire?
I think as well, it's important to be true to yourself as a business owner. You know where your passions lie. It's important to follow that rather than necessarily the money all the time, because when you're following the money and it's not something you're passionate about, a lot of the time it won't work out. So yeah, it's about being true to yourself and where your passions lie in terms of where you want the business to be and go, rather than just about where the money is and where you think you can make more money.
I do agree, but I do think that we are all going to make mistakes, and I think that I'm very much a person that says, okay, look, let's try it, let's give it a chance, and let's dip our toe in the market. So we talk about different models, and you mentioned about specialising in performance cars as opposed to maybe family hatchbacks, or so on. I think it's a case of you try things, you see if they work. If they do, you move more towards that direction and away. And I think that we're all stronger from making mistakes. I think it's well known now that we're better and stronger from the fact that we learn from our mistakes, and actually makes us stronger. You cannot avoid all mistakes by thinking that you can just watch everybody else or read books or see how other people perform. Sometimes you've just got to go and get your hands dirty and accept that sometimes it backfires on you.
It's about getting in the trenches, isn't it? And like you say, you can't be scared to fail. It's about how if you do fail from that, taking that as a learning, which, is actually a success. And then, as long as you don't make that same mistake again, I think it is a success, isn't it? Because like you say, you never know unless you try. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
That's right.
So, obviously, we're going through a very tough period now with everything with COVID-19. For you, in your career at Fontaine Motors, other than obviously everything going on now, what was the toughest period of time for the business?
I would say, and probably a lot of people in our industry would say the same, would have been, and other industries would have been 2008 credit crunch.
Yeah.
That was the big standout. That was a very interesting period because for that year, business 2008, it got very sluggish, and I don't know how familiar you are with it, but we sort of credit crunch came in about summer 2008, and that whole year seemed quite sluggish for us. And from about the summer all the way through to almost up to Christmas, we had found that used car prices generally, not just Audis, but generally were in free fall. And they had lost something like, by the time you got near to Christmas, they'd lost something like 25% of their value, possibly more, some models.
Wow.
And that was quite crushing, really, because you suddenly are in a position where we'd been in a very stagnant market where prices had remained very high, but business was very slow. And then all of a sudden, you found prices were just dropping, and our competitors were dropping price, everybody were dropping price, and you realized to sell your cars, you were going to have to lose a lot of money. But in a way, it created opportunities because you had to accept that, well, that's where the market was. You had to lower your prices. Probably we lost a lot of money then in a few months. But what that did was it then created, we got cash into the bank, maybe less than we'd had, but we got cash back into the bank. And then we found that prices were substantially lower by Christmas 2008. So much so that we were buying stock for several £1,000s less than we were previously. But all of a sudden, the customers started coming out.
Right. Yeah.
And we then, after that period of the credit crunch, going into 2009, which became a bit of a recessionary time for the UK, but actually for the used car market, it was very buoyant. And I think one of the things we did do at the time was react to that market very quickly. So we accepted that we were losing money 2008, but then we learned from that, moved into 2009. And the sort of first half of 2009, we were probably selling about double the number of cars we normally sell. We normally sell at that time about 30 cars a month, and we were trading about 60 a month. Because people have moved.
So I was just going to say, so how quickly did that correction happen? Obviously, there was the dip, the drop in the market, the car market. How long did that take to correct? At that stage.
It literally got to a tipping point where I think that a little bit like the sort of situation we're in now, but I don't think it's going to unfold in quite the same way, but where we had this very stagnant period, then you had prices dropping because we were still in a stagnant period and people just dropped on prices to better sell their stock. And then it just got to a point where that 25%-ish, around about their percentage, knocked off an average 3-year-old car. And I think it just dawned on the general public, coming up to about Christmas time, wow, I'm not going to buy a new car. I can't get the finance. I'm not going to buy anything new. But wow, look at this 2-year-old example. This is an absolute bargain. And all of a sudden, I think people suddenly saw the value in cars. And it didn't take a lot. And it just flipped, almost flipped on its head. And all of a sudden, the phones were ringing like mad, selling lots of cars. People going, wow, that's a good price, we'll buy that.
So you bought a lot of your stock at the point where that dip had happened? Because that's a big risk. Because I'm sure you weren't that sure where the market was going to go. So to make that risk and buy the stock like you did at a point where probably money probably wasn't at hand as easy as it previously had been, then that's a huge risk to have made. How confident were you with that?
Well, it probably makes us sound smarter than we were. I think in fairness, what happened was we'd sold a few cars, we'd lost money on them because they owed us too much money and we sold them at a loss. But then we had some empty spaces on the forecourt. Yes, the market had been very bad, but then we were looking at the time at the auctions where leasing companies had to shift their cars. They'd come back from lease, they'd been put into the auction, they needed to shift those cars. So they needed to take a price, and they were taking hits in the auction. And I suppose we were looking at it and saying, well, gosh, that looks really cheap. Wow. Why don't we buy it? Yeah. So we didn't buy too many, we bought a few, advertise them, and suddenly, wow, the phone started ringing. So we didn't go out and buy huge quantities in one go. We were buying a bit here, a bit there. Then we found the momentum was getting going with retail customers. They were ringing, they were coming in, they were buying. And then we got more and more confident, and the whole thing gathered momentum. But it's quite incredible, I think, what you find is, and I think it's the same as this period we're going through now, is that we do as humans adapt very quickly to a given circumstances. And I think it's important to stay realistic, not negative, but realistic. But also grab the chances when they arise, but just be wary about what's going on and be prepared to change your mind the next day if that's what the market's showing you.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So from 2008, what are you going to take from that period and instill into everything we're going through now, with the recession that we're entering, everything with COVID-19?
Yep. Well, I think two things. Well, yes, definitely stay positive. Every negative impact always has a positive in some way. For instance, right now, as I think I mentioned at the beginning, I've been helping a good friend of mine in his bicycle shop, because his business, he's probably doing 4 times the normal amount of business right now, because we've had great weather, people are at home, very little exercise. They go out with their family on their bikes, and we've seen, in his shop, where people have had bicycles in their sheds for 10 years, never used them, and all of a sudden they're getting them out and having them serviced, putting them on the road again. So I think there are always going to be positives as well as negatives. Sorry?
That was said. That's exactly what I've done. I've got an old Peugeot bike that has been sitting in the garage for a good few years, and that's currently being serviced now at a bike shop. But they're saying how busy they are. So, like you say, some industries are booming from this.
Yeah. But I think what I take from 2008, in answer to your question, is that I think if we looked back at sort of early autumn 2008 with prices falling, you could be really, really quite down about that. Running a business at the time would be very worrying time. I mean, I was very worried at the time. And yet, just 6 months later, we're saying, wow, look at this turnaround. So I think that you've just got to keep open to possibilities, move with the market. It's very difficult in a situation like this, because we're currently facing, because there was a lot more predictability around about the credit crunch, because those sort of things have happened before lots of times. But in our lifetime, none of us have seen anything like this.
No.
And therefore, we really don't know what's around the corner. So, from my perspective is that beware of reading too much of people guessing what's going to happen, what we're going to do. And I think it can confuse you. I think it can depress you.
Yeah.
If I'm honest with you, I've probably used a lot of this time. Yes, I've got strategies I've worked out, but I've spent a lot of this time finding other things to occupy my mind that I enjoy. And I do think that's very important. I say to anybody, even whoever they are, business owners, employees, you can only deal with the things that you can deal with. Exactly. And you can't worry about every eventuality. And I think right now is to look after yourself mentally, and perhaps not try and go onto social media too much, and to wait. And I think we just have to let things unfold, and then we can make a move based on that information.
I completely agree. I mean, what comes first is always mental health at the end of the day. And like you say, there's people, whether it be business owners, employees, people that are furloughed, people are stressing, people are worrying. But what's most important is, not trying to change something that is out of our reach at this stage. But like you say, finding ways to kind of adapt to the situation and to kind of help us mentally, whether that be learning a new skill. As long as you kind of take something out of this time and use it in some way, whether it be, like we say, a new skill, new hobby, then I think, like you say, that is the most important thing, as well as obviously, looking to the future. But things are changing so often. I mean, you and I had this situation where we had to adapt our strategy. We had a campaign running. We adapted it about 3 times in a week because of the news changing. I think we went from, to you guys, we firstly, Marcus was doing something where if you were to get a service with Fontaine Motors, you would get a free antibacterial cleanse of the car, and we filmed something for this. We were going to run an ad for this, and then instantly, I think a couple of days later, we were kind of put into lockdown, so that had stopped, and we had to adapt several times to it. So yeah, that was quite interesting. But that's why something like this, I think you've got to look a bit further down the line almost, because things are changing so quickly. So
I
yeah,
think you're right. I think we did our best, didn't we? I mean, we went from a sort of more of a marketing campaign to more of an informative campaign. And you're right. We, as you say, we recorded things that never got used because they just weren't appropriate by the time that we, got ready to go out. And I think, gosh, how many times I've changed the pop-up on our website to inform customers of what our current situation is regarding this.
yeah,
And I think that's all you can do is take your best, not guess, but your best in the information you're given and put that out there. I think it's very important to keep in touch with your customers. That's definitely key. And I think, yes, from social media perspective, Facebook and signage, they need to know that you're still there. What is your situation? When are you likely to open again? And so on. But of course, like all business, these things are up in the air and slightly open to change. And we do our best and inform our customers the best ways we can.
yeah. So I guess that's part of your, your strategies. How else have you adapted to, have you got much idea at this stage how you're adapting the strategy for the future? Is it still something you're thinking about?
So we've moved to the point where we're now looking to reopen the service department. I mean, bear in mind with our service department, that is considered as an essential business, or can be as an essential business. We took the decision on the 25th of March, a couple of days after lockdown. We took the decision to close the business. We gauged our customers that we had. We talked to all the customers we had bookings for. We finished all the important work, urgent work. We had a couple of vehicles for key workers. We finished that work. And at that time, with the business that we had, and looking at the risk factor to our staff, we made the decision to close the business. And again, that was a decision that, one day we were keeping it open on a skeleton staff for key workers, and then realised that just wasn't viable for us. So had to then change again. But we've kept the phones on. So the phones have been answered. I've kept in touch with customers so that they're informed. And obviously, if there was a very, very urgent requirement, I'd either try to see that customer where they can get that work done, or to see if we could do it. As it's happened, we haven't had to reopen so far. But we've made the decision now to reopen on Monday, the 11th of May. We're getting to the stage now. We've got quite a lot of customers that are really quite desperate to get some of their service work done. Even just if you look at late Audis, and this is going to be an interesting one to see how this plays out, that, to keep your car within its warranty, to keep it maintained properly, you're supposed to have your car serviced within so many miles of when it should be, or so many months of its inspection date. And of course, those are things are all being shifted, and people are going overdue on servicing. And to be honest with you, a lot of people aren't using their cars so much. It's probably not a big problem. But I think people are getting slightly anxious now, and they hold off for a couple of months. But people are getting a little bit anxious that they make sure their car is still reliable. And a lot of people like to get their car checked. So we decided to open. It's going to be very much a skeleton crew. And again, it's something I've just put into place. Various things that we're doing for social distancing and also protection of vehicles. So we're going to go right over to an appointment base. So we're going to give customers a time slot to come in, and by doing this is to help us and them to avoid lots of customers being in at the same time. Obviously, we really only want one customer in at a time. Limited crew in the workshops. Protection in the vehicles in terms of covering down seats, steering wheels, gear knobs, all those sort of things. And I think before, one of the things we're quite proud of doing is we have an antibacterial aerosol which you can click on and leave in the vehicles completely dispersed inside the vehicle with the engine running and the air conditioning system on recirculation, and that is supposed to kill a lot of bacteria and viral inside the vehicle. So that's something that we're going to be doing for all our service customers when they come in.
I really like that, and you know what you just said there. I think it goes back to, and we made a post about this on our Instagram the other day, but it's offering true value now for more sales later potentially. But I think with this case, what you've just said there is, you know, how can we offer more value with our service, you know, in the current climate? And I think offering something like that as an added extra is just a nice little touch and a way to kind of add to that service.
Yeah.
And you know, there's business, all kinds of businesses are doing this. You know, for instance, Buffer, which is the scheduling software that we use at Hamby Media, you know, they're doing something where they're offering the next 3 months free of charge to every single one of their customers. And, you know, things like this that businesses are doing, if you can offer more value in these ways now, I think it's going to help in the long term. You know, it may not be, you know, the best move in terms of kind of money for the short term, but you're looking at your kind of long-term brand identity and how it's going to help build your community, and how people are going to perceive your brand in the future. I think it's a really, really exciting and incredible time to be able to have that, grow that connection with your customer base.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do agree with you, but I just think from a personal point of view, it's all, I look at it that, well, how would I want to see, if I went in and I had a service somewhere, how would I want to see that all happen? Exactly. And I want to feel that my dealership really cares about me and their staff, and they're going to be able to, you know, try and protect us as best they can. I mean, you know, it's slightly difficult because we don't have any direction from the government on how businesses like us should operate, bearing in mind that, you know, a servicing dealership is viewed as potentially essential. Therefore, we are allowed to open even now, but there's no real direction on what things do we need to put in place to make sure that social distancing is conformed with, and how we protect people's vehicles, etc. So I think we're having to make that up ourselves really, and do what we just consider as best practice. Yeah. And I think it's more about that. I mean, I just think that you know, we do want our customers to be protected, and we do want them to think that we care about them, because we do. And obviously, yes, we don't want people to be too apprehensive or frightened of coming in and having their car worked on. If we can allay their fears, maybe put their minds at rest on how we're going to deal with that process. I think moving on from that, with car sales, that's a very difficult one. There's been some confusing, contradictory things. It's never been that clear on whether you can still sell a car or not. And it's only recently, in the last few days, been clarified. But I believe that for a while it was believed that only sort of key workers could buy a car, right? And it would have to be done at some kind of distance. But it's now being clarified that you can buy a car, but as long as good social distancing practices adhered to. So it's really a case of sort of click and collect or deliver the car to the customer. Certainly no test drives, no browsing around showrooms. Showrooms must remain shut. That's the only thing we do know for sure, is the actual showroom must remain shut. You can't just have customers walking into a showroom and browsing cars.
Yeah, and I think an important point to make here is, and I think you just touched on that, but obviously we can talk as much as we want about strategy, but like you say, really, what comes before all of that is the safety and health of your customers. So that's interesting. So on the dealership side, then, do you have kind of a plan there in terms of what strategy will look like with reopening the dealership side of the business? Obviously, the showroom can't open, but in terms of selling cars, where does that go?
So we're at the moment currently devising a new delivery service, nationwide delivery service, and we're looking at that and setting out the conditions for that. And also we've kind of got click and collect already, because we've got the reservation system on our website. That's all there. So you can go onto our website, you can reserve a car, and it's a refundable deposit if you don't want the car when you get there. And then what we're envisaging is a system where we'll just formalize that more. And it will basically be, if you want to buy a car, it will be click and collect, come and collect at an appointment time, or we deliver it at a pre-planned time. Until we hear further from the government, I think, obviously, until we know that showrooms can reopen, and that's really just going to be a case of, as we know, watching out and not really thinking of it any more than that, because at the moment, as I say, we're told that showrooms must stay firmly shut. So I think we can only really wait. It's a waiting game, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree. So we kind of touched on it previously a little bit, but do you have any more advice for business owners, and on how to stay positive during these times?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, once you've done all the things you can do, the sort of things we did, the minute the doors were shut and we had no money coming in, and we have had no money coming in for over a month now, looking at all the costs that you can save, where you can perhaps negotiate putting some cost off. I mean, I think a lot of our suppliers have been incredibly good to us, to mitigate expenses going out unnecessarily. The government's been very good with furlough scheme. There's been grants for retailers like us through our rates. So we've had some positive things. But once you do all that, and you put that to one side, and once you've done as much planning as you can do, then I think it's important to have your downtime and to try to find something else to focus your energy in that's perhaps away from your business. I mean, that genuinely is. I know people talk about hobbies and so on. I really, really do think, and I personally sometimes worry about business leaders, owners that perhaps live, breathe their business 24/7 and don't have much downtime. So I think it's those people that can be possibly most vulnerable to this period, because it's so uncertain. So I think it's nice to be able to have your downtime. And I love my garden. I often say it's like the fourth bridge here. I've got so much to do, I wouldn't have enough time to go back to work. Perhaps I won't. But no, I just think it's really nice. Whatever you enjoy doing outside of work that you can safely do at the moment, and if you can't, just find something that you can get quite passionate about, that can take your mind away from it. Because I think it is very important to keep for your mind to be healthy. Really, is to stop looking at the same things over and over. I mean, they often said that, didn't they? The 9/11 disasters in New York, and how they replayed that over and over and over on TV, and how bad that is for people. Because it's only with the advent that you can record TV that people are able to see something over and over. And I don't know about a lot of other people, but I found that at the start of this lockdown, I was watching the news all the time. And now I found I'm watching the news less and less and less. I'm seeing the key facts. Yeah, I'm seeing the key factors, seeing the trends. Apart from that,
I think
I'd rather...
at what point does it become more toxic than good? I mean, it's important to keep up to date, but then again, there's a lot of information out there which is, I think, scaremongering, and isn't necessary for us to be kind of absorbing and taking in. So yeah,
absolutely.
So I mean, we've spoken a lot about your business. You've given some incredible advice to other business owners. Where do you think this leaves the automotive industry now then, in the next 18 months?
It's a really difficult one. So lots of factors in there, really. I think you would like to see you'd like to say there's a pent-up demand. and that you'd love to see a day when the government sort of say, well, showrooms can open again, and all of a sudden customers are out in their droves, and saying, oh, you know, we put off buying a car, let's go out and get our car, and so on, and suddenly there's a big spike in business. But and that would be a very positive outcome, very positive way of looking at it. Probably the realistic side of me says that I think this, let's face it, this isn't going to suddenly stop. You know, this is going to be an ongoing thing. Even if we get a gradual lifting of the lockdown, it's going to be a very gradual process. And I think consumers could be very wary and just put things off generally. Having said that, there's other factors here involved. Well, obviously the manufacturing's been heavily affected, to the point where I think that new cars will take a long time for new car production to get back to normal. And in the meantime, I think there's going to be possibly quite a shortage of used cars in the market, new and used cars in the market. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, I think it's anybody's guess, really.
I mean, like you say, you know, if that is the case, that's the supply, you know, supply and demand, isn't it? So you would hope that that would correct the
absolutely
problem.
So I think that there's a feeling that, you know, prices could drop from all this, although the best leading bodies in the industry are suggesting that prices are really going to stay static, because we're almost at the moment in a state of suspended animation, because nothing's really being bought, nothing's really being sold, so therefore prices are just static. Beyond that, I think the other big consideration is how we sell, and I think definitely that how we sell will be affected for possibly, as you say, a year, 18 months, or possibly forever. Because one of the things, especially with used cars, is that unlike lots of products you buy off Amazon and so on, that you just click and it gets delivered. With a typical used car, very, very few people purchase in that manner, and most people like to see the metal, you know, up close before they commit. And I think that the biggest thing being talked about at the moment is that we feel that there's going to be a bigger move to purchasing online and having the vehicle delivered. As you know, it forms part of distance selling, which means to say you have a 14-day cooling off period, just as much as you buy something off Amazon, and it just gets delivered to your house. And with used cars, that's a tricky one. So I think there will definitely be an increase in that. How much, whether it takes over as being the preferred choice, I think probably not. I think a click and collect, a sort of, I'll put a deposit down online and I'll come along and make an appointment. I'd rather see it in the flesh before I actually pay my money over. I still feel that will probably be the preferred choice, but I think certainly sort of the thoughts of just walking into showrooms, that could, it could potentially start the process of seeing less showrooms generally, as I think even car manufacturers now, the big dealerships with the huge showrooms, perhaps over the next few years now, you're seeing not so many of those around, and people moving slightly away from those, and a lot more decision making going online.
Right. Yeah. No, that's really interesting insight. I mean, obviously, moving on from that, in terms of, being a digital marketing agency, I had to kind of end on this question. But, for you, have you given the digital marketing side any thought in terms of where that goes when say, lockdown is over and we're kind of, well, not back to normal, but business is back to business as usual, as it were. But something we learned, I think, in the build up to this was that you have to be very sensitive online and on social in terms of kind of how you sell what you're selling, especially during times like this. You need to be very sensitive to that, in terms of not being too salesy and not being too pushy during a period like this where, it's health is number one during something like this. So yeah, what are your kind of thoughts on that side of things, and how you're going to change and adapt digital marketing compared to how you had previously?
Well, I mean, I think it just goes to show you how important it is, how crucial it is for your business. I mean, from a point of view of putting information out there, quickest way of getting information out to a lot of people quickly about how your business is operating, and then through times like this, it's been really, really important. How do I see that evolving? I think in the same way, and I think actually it will become more crucial for a business to engage in social media to survive moving forward. I think there's a number of really, really interesting things I felt that are coming out of this. I think it's been going this way for a while, but I think this is really accelerating. This whole period we're going through is accelerating this whole more of a peer-to-peer type of selling. I mean, in the motor trade, we've been very used to years of big platforms. We've got one called Auto Trader, which everybody knows is a household name. Big platforms where you advertise your cars, and that's the only way you can sell a car is through Auto Trader. And I think that's really fast changing, fast moving, and more people are seeing their buying moving to more social media, engaging with the company. And I think we chatted about this, haven't we, before, that the selling process is not an overnight thing.
No.
You know, often people, they're interested in an Audi, perhaps they start looking at Audis. That may take them months or even more like years before they buy that particular Audi that they've always fancied buying. And so I think in being able to engage with customers, getting your name across, especially in an informative way, creates loyalty to your company. And then when it comes to selling, or when it comes to you selling your products, that you're already in front of their mind.
Yeah.
And I think more than ever that's become more crucial, because profitability in the motor trade, in car retailing, has been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed over the years. So platforms such as Auto Trader, which is incredibly expensive to advertise on, I think it's going to become a bit of a dinosaur, because I just don't think that the margins are there. And especially when you look through times like this, when actually paying out big amounts of money through crises like this are a non-goer for a lot of companies. And we've all been, I'm sure all companies, the first thing we've done is looked at every single cost we can shove to one side. And it's interesting, you put all these costs to one side, but you still find you've got your social media that you've built up that actually doesn't have to cost you anything.
Yeah.
Because you've already got those followers.
Once you've got that platform, it's already there. And
you've got the followers, yeah. You've built those followers up, and you're still being able to inform them, and you're not paying any money out to do that. You're not constantly feeding the machine. Now, okay, I admit that I should point out that there's been a lot of companies, including Auto Trader, and a lot of the other platforms like eBay and so on, that have actually made their advertising free through this period. So they're certainly already saying April and May are free. So they're very, very helpful. But I also think they're guarding their business. Yeah. Because if it wasn't free, we'd be saying, well, I'll tell you what, let's hit the cancel button and we'll come back to you. And I think a lot of people also say that the biggest expenses are the first ones you cut in a crisis. They're probably also the last thing you reinstate after the crisis.
That's interesting.
And I think a lot of these businesses are going to be mindful of that, and they're going to want to give us value, because otherwise they're not going to survive. And that's why I think it's at times like this that we realise what value is in things like Facebook marketing. Yeah. How much value, how cost effective that is, because what you're doing is you're just building that up over a long period. But it doesn't just evaporate the minute you stop paying money out.
That's what I love about it. It's you're honing that platform, that community, and it's not, it's not on someone else's platform like Auto Trader, where at any point they could pull the plug, or if you pull the plug, that's just completely valid. This is here, it's there, and you've built up that community to kind of continue that. So
exactly, peer to peer. It's the most direct way of getting information and marketing to customers. Is direct to them.
And I think as well, for business owners, these times have probably pushed people more into using social media as a means of advertising, as a means of connecting, as a means of communicating with their audience, because it's it's one of the only ways that we can at this stage. So I think, like you say, it's not that it's a great time for social, because people, although a lot did realise before the power it had, I think now it's really kind of showing you during, no matter what, it's always there to kind of aid you and be that tool to kind of help build your brand and your community.
Totally agree.
But yeah, I mean, that's everything my end, Marcus. I really, really appreciate it. I think, you've given a lot of insight, a lot of value. It's been great to kind of have a catch up.
Thank you.
I can't wait for us to start working.
Well, it's nice seeing you, Lucas.
I know.
Nice seeing you. I haven't seen you for a while.
But yeah, I'm sure we'll be in contact again very soon anyway. Guys, if you enjoyed that, I certainly did. Please drop this video a like. If you could share it amongst anyone you think it'd be relevant to, that would be really, really useful. I appreciate your time, and I think that's pretty much it, Marcus. Thank you so much. Fontaine Motors.
Thank you, Lucas.
I'll put their socials in the bio. I'll put Marcus's info in the bio as well. If you need an Audi, you know where to go. Or if you need an Audi repaired or service, you know where to go. Marcus, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucas.
Cool. Cheers.